Welcome back to another episode. My name is Joshua Roberts, attorney at law, and you're watching Lawyer Up. This episode, we are doing a viewer request. I had a request to do an episode on unemployment benefits, and it is a hot topic right now. We're amid the COVID-19 virus. A lot of people are unemployed and laid off, and so an episode on unemployment benefits is very timely. So if you learned something today, hit that like button. If you want to learn more, subscribe. If you have friends that could benefit from learning about unemployment benefit law, then share this on social media. And if you have something to say, comment below. And remember, I am a lawyer, but I am not your lawyer. If you need a lawyer specific to your legal situation, then you should lawyer up with an attorney in your area. Now, when we're talking about unemployment benefits, we're talking about payments made by a government to qualified unemployed individuals that are members of a labor force in order to give them a basic living wage. Now we're going to go through that and look at each word individually, but the idea is that these unemployed individuals are workers or a member of the workforce. We're not talking about people who are just generally not working. There are a lot of people that aren't working because of their own choice. We have people who are retired. We have children. Children don't work. We don't make babies or children get jobs. They just are unemployed, but they aren't what we're talking about when we're talking about unemployed workers. We also have individuals that are disabled who can't work. And then there's homemakers or other people who don't work just by choice. These are not the people we're talking about. In the United States, nearly half of the people don't work. But those aren't the people that are figured in when we're talking about unemployment or unemployment rates. When we're talking about the unemployment rate, we're looking at the percentage of the workforce, people who are wanting to work, that can't find employment. And that's where we get our unemployment rates that you hear about on the news. So let's talk about the history of unemployment benefit law. Now, the concept of having a national insurance program for people who are out of work first basically hit the planet in England in the early 1900s. In the United States, this concept of a national insurance program for workers was first introduced after the Great Depression. What the government did was study the demographics of the population that was hardest hit during the Depression, and then they developed some policies and some regulations to try to alleviate those problems. During the Great Depression, the biggest impact was felt on number one, the retired population, the elderly population that didn't have the ability to make an income. A second group of people that was impacted were basically children that lived in impoverished families. And finally, the other large demographic that was affected the most in the Great Depression was unemployed workers, or people who couldn't provide a basic wage for their family. As part of Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal, he introduced in 1935 something called the Social Security Act. What the Social Security Act introduced into American government and American politics was the idea of a Social Security system, essentially a retirement insurance system for elderly people. The act also included the new program Aid to Dependent Children. And finally, and relevant to today's topic, the Social Security Act of 1935 introduced a federal unemployment benefit program. As I mentioned, what this act was designed to do was to meet the needs of the retirement community. Prior to the advent of Social Security, there was no means by which the elderly could be provided a basic living wage once they retired from work. Also, the Aid to Dependent Children dealt with children who were in homes that are at or below the federal poverty level and provided those families with a basic living wage. And finally, with unemployment benefits, there were people that were out of work through no fault of their own, and this Act of 1935 allowed a national insurance program to provide for these individuals. Now, the Social Security Act has been expanded and tweaked over the years. Most notably was in 1965 when the government got into the health insurance business with the addition of the Medicare program, and that is health insurance through the government for the elderly or older population and or people who are disabled. And they also got into Medicaid, which was added to the Social Security Act, and that is to provide health insurance for families that are at or below the federal poverty level. So how do we pay for this national insurance program? Well, a lot of people will tell you it's through payroll taxes, and a lot of the Social Security Act programs are paid for by payroll taxes. And what I mean by that is when you get your check at the end of 2 weeks or however often you get paid, there are certain deductions that are taken out and they're paid to the government. Part of that goes for the Medicare program. Part of that is the advance payment on your income taxes. And some people mistakenly say that part of that goes towards unemployment insurance, but that's not correct. In fact, unemployment insurance premiums come directly from employers. It is illegal, except in 3 states, for an employer to charge any portion of their unemployment insurance premium to an employee's wages. So this national insurance program is paid for by employers in the United States. Now let's talk about its administration. The program, while technically is a federal one, it's administered through the states. So the money that is collected goes into each state's unemployment compensation fund and then is doled out or administered by each state's Division of Employment Security Office. So now that you know a little bit of history behind unemployment law, where it came from, and basically how it's funded and how it's administered, let's talk about who qualifies for benefits. To qualify for unemployment benefits, you have to lose your job through no fault of your own, which means you can't just quit and walk away and say, I don't want to do this anymore, give me my unemployment check. Now there are some exceptions to that allow you to quit. If you are being harassed in the workplace, you can quit. If you are being exposed to a dangerous work condition, you can also quit. Finally, there's a scenario where you are completely written off the schedule, where your employer says, well, I didn't fire him, I just gave him 0 hours. In all of those cases, the law looks at that as a constructive termination, that even though technically you weren't fired, it was tantamount to you being fired and you still qualify for unemployment benefits. A separate but equally valid reason if you were to quit employment would be for an FMLA reason, or a Federal Medical Leave Act reason. If you or a loved one are sick and you qualify, you can still get unemployment benefits if you have to leave employment for those reasons. The second thing you need to do is have a sufficient earning history. And what that means is you can't just work for 2 days and then say, I'm out of here, I want to have my unemployment benefit check. You have to be in the workforce for a sufficient period of time to generate wages which qualify you for unemployment benefits. Now this amount is not significant, usually about $2,500 worth of gross wages in the prior year is enough to qualify you for unemployment benefits. So that threshold is pretty low. Once you qualify for unemployment benefits, then there are things you have to do to maintain weekly benefits. One thing you have to do is report weekly on your efforts to gain employment. Most states now have an online verification portal where you go in and you log in and you enter efforts that you have made to seek employment. Many states require you to submit at least 3 applications during the week to qualify for unemployment benefits. You also have to report any wages that you earned if you did work during that week. It's also a requirement that you have been able to work. So if you went out of town on vacation or you were ill or had a medical procedure, you don't technically qualify for unemployment benefits in that week. Another thing that's interesting about unemployment law is that it's constantly changing. In the state of Missouri, where I practice, the normal requirement is to submit 3 applications or 3 places where you looked for a job during the week. But currently, right now, we're amid the coronavirus, where a lot of people are unemployed or laid off and really can't seek any new employment. So that 3 applications a week provision has been waived right now under Missouri unemployment law benefits. So how much do you get? What is your benefit amount? Well, each state has basically a mathematical equation to determine that. What most states do is they look back at the last year of your gross wages. They take the top 2 quarters, and that's 3 months. It's broken up into quarter, 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 quarter. They take the top 2 of those, and then they average them. Once they get an average for your top 2 quarters of the preceding year's wages, then they multiply it by a multiplier. In Missouri, it's 4%. So you take that number times 4%, and that is your unemployment benefit wage. Now, of course, this amount as a weekly benefit is capped. The most that the state of Missouri will pay is $320 a week. Now, every state's different. New York, for example, pays $500 a week as their cap. There's also an aggregate cap at the amount of total money that you can get in a benefit year. In Missouri, it's 20 times the amount of your weekly check. So in Missouri, it would be $6,400, and in the state of New York, for example, would be $10,000. Again, this is often expanded upon in times of financial hardship. Currently, with the coronavirus, the state of Missouri is giving people an extra $600 a week for full unemployment benefits to help them deal with the current situation. Finally, let's talk about the duration of benefits. In most states, the maximum duration of unemployment benefits is 26 weeks. That is half of 52 or 6 months of unemployment benefits. The legislature has determined that in that period of time, the average member of the workforce should be able to find replacement employment. However, again, in the midst of this coronavirus, the legislature has extended that to 39 weeks, which is 9 months of benefits. So that's the summary of basic unemployment benefit law. It's not designed such that you're supposed to have an attorney. There is an online portal for most states with a very simple application. You just fill in your personal information and then they do the work on the back end. One thing I will mention that comes into play in 26 states, and that is a shared work program. Now, generally, you have to be unemployed to qualify for unemployment benefits. If you've got a part-time job, you are not unemployed. You have to be totally unemployed. However, in 26 states, there is a shared work program for people who are basically laid off or their time has been reduced from full-time down to part-time. And this generally kicks in on the employer side of things when at least 10% of their workforce has been laid off or cut from full-time to part-time. And what the state does, the Division of Employment Security Office agrees that they will basically pick up the rest of the wages. So if you go from 40 hours a week, say down to 25 hours a week, the unemployment office will give you a prorated unemployment benefit for the balance of those hours. The catch is that your employer, even though they're paying part-time wages, they have to maintain full-time benefits. That means full-time retirement, full-time health care, and whatever benefits the employee had before as a full-time worker, even though now they're part-time. The states that do this have figured out that it's cheaper for them to pay these partial unemployment wages than to deal with these types of workers who, if they lost their benefits, would then be filing for Medicaid, health insurance, or Obamacare and those types of government programs that would actually tax the system more than if they just pay these partial unemployment benefits to the worker. So it's actually a win-win for everybody. The employers get to reduce workers to meet the basic overall demands for employment of the business. The individual workers who are laid off or their hours are cut, they get those hours made up by state unemployment benefits, and the state as a whole benefits because those workers keep their fringe benefits, keep their health insurance and related benefits through the employer, and they don't become a burden on the state's program. So that's your summary on unemployment benefit law. I want to encourage you out there, comment below. If there's an area of the law that you would like to hear about, you would like to learn more about, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, if you learned something today, hit that like button. If you've got friends that you think would benefit from this channel, then share it on social media. And if you want to know more, subscribe. Thank you for watching another episode of Lawyer Up.
Send lawyers, guns, and money. Dad, get me out of this.